plenty. I didn't realize there was a book, The Peace to End All Peace. John Gutman was the one who put that thought in my head. I'll have to look into that. All right, let's go. Let me get started. There we go. Okay, by October of 1918, the situation in Germany was getting really desperate. And with revolution, hunger strikes, labor strikes, situation was bad, and the Kaiser realized he had to go. So on 28th of October, he departed Berlin for Spa, Belgium, and the Hotel Le Britannique is where the German General Staff headquarters. And in my 2007 visit, you could actually see the paint on the brickwork. Very easy to locate. And the Kaiser signed the abdication at midnight on the 9th of November, and that date would come back into German history, the bottom 4 points there. And at least 2 of them, the second and third points, were not coincidence. Kristallnacht worked out very conveniently for Hitler, but his putsch was definitely 9th of November, was chosen for a reason. Don't know about the Berlin Wall. That may have been coincidence, I'm uncertain. So if you want to find the Hotel Britannique, it's very easy to locate. The N62 is the main highway running through the town. And 5 hours after signing the abdication, the Kaiser's motorcade departed en route to Amerongen. I'll give you a second to look at the slide there. Why Amerongen? Count Bentinck and the Kaiser were both members of the Order of St. John, a Protestant version of the Knights of Malta. So there was some fraternal association. Kaiser signed another letter of abdication on the 28th of November, primarily to resolve a German constitutional question. In this period photograph shows some curious Dutch citizens looking through an opening in the castle wall, hoping to get a glimpse of the Kaiser. And in 1995, a curious Steve Miller looked through the exact same opening. The August of 1919, the Kaiser and Kaiserin bought Hoosdorn nearby for their private home and moved there on the 15th of May. Hoosdorn is worth a visit. When I was there was no photography permitted inside, but my charm and good looks prevailed. Well, actually, the docent was really startled to find a Yank who even knew anything about the place. So what you're going to see is a combination of my photos and some photos from the gift shop. If your spouse, significant other, acquaintance, whoever is accompanying you isn't interested in military history, they'll certainly enjoy looking at this place for its art. Whoops, back a little bit. In the right center, you'll see the mausoleum, and in the foreground center, the stone eagle, and you'll see 4 squares. There was actually 5. Those are where the Kaiser's dogs are buried. And inside the mausoleum is the Kaiser's coffin. The Kaiserin died in 1921, and she's buried in Potsdam. I don't understand why, but that's just something I don't understand. All right, back to France. This is the route the German delegation took to reach La Capella. I'll get into the reason for La Capella in a minute. And this famous drawing by George Scott shows them crossing the French lines at a place called Pierre de Haudroy. I looked for a picture of Captain Lahilliere, no luck, absolutely could not find one. I did find a number of pictures of Caporal Sellier. There would be an annual reenactment at this location where the George Scott drawing showed the German delegation crossing the line. And he would come here and reenact his sounding of ceasefire. After crossing the lines, they went down to La Capella to a residence called Villa Paquet. In my visit to that region, I didn't know about this, so these bottom two photos are off the internet. And as best as I can make out of the French, one of these plaques here is this one over here. They were brought here to rest a bit, change from their German vehicles to French vehicles in accordance with instructions from Marshal Foch. They were met by staff officers of Debety's Sixth Army in a room dominated by a portrait of Napoleon III. This was the first specter of 1871, which would come back to haunt the Germans. 1871, of course, was the end of the Franco-Prussian War, and that'll come up a bit later as well. They drove to Tergnier, arriving, you can read that. I'll give you a minute. And at Tergnier, they got aboard a rail car, which had been Napoleon III's dining car and had Napoleon's emblem prominently displayed inside the car. By now, they were beginning to wonder what's going on. They were going to find out. This photograph is a puzzle. According to the caption in the upper right-hand corner, this is the arrival of the German plenipotentiaries through the French lines. Well, we know that occurred at night, and the drive to Tergnier was at night. So when and where was this picture taken? I truthfully do not know. They are still in the German vehicle. You can see the Imperial Eagle on the side of the vehicle. And the main reason I'm even showing this picture are these white flags, which were made out of tablecloths. In the 1990s, my wife and I visited the Woodrow Wilson house, and right inside the door was a small table with a white tablecloth and an artillery shell case. No photography allowed, but it turns out the white tablecloth was one of the German white flags, and the artillery shell case was from the first artillery round fired in combat by American forces, a present from Pershing to Wilson. I made an inquiry about the display. I think I mentioned no photography allowed. And they assured me the artillery shell case still existed, but the white tablecloth drew total blanks. So after some discussion, they decided it was probably in storage to protect it. It seems all the cloth furnishings in the Woodrow Wilson house, tablecloths, bedspreads, curtains, were extremely fragile due to their age. So at least they now allow photography, and I was able to get a picture of the shell casing. If you're in the Woodrow Wilson house, you may want to go to the nearby Washington National Cathedral and say hello to Woodrow Wilson. Back to France. This is Foch's rail car arriving in Compiègne, that Compiègne being the wide spot in the road near the agreed meeting site. And here's where the two trains, one French, one German, met up for the signing of the armistice. And we've all seen this photograph, and the rail car 2419D, which I'll get into extensively in a few minutes. This map will show you where the Armistice Glade, as it's now known, it's about 3.5 miles northeast of Compiègne. Stone markers showing the location of each rail car, and between them, this large stone slab. And there's a translation of the French, which I'll give you a minute to read. And as you first walk into this, one of the first things in the line of sight is the statue, the German eagle slain by a French sword. And and you can read the inscription. As you might know, France lost Alsace and Lorraine after the Franco-Prussian War, and that became a cause célèbre for some retaliation in 1918. This building was constructed to house Foch's rail car, and it also serves as a museum. No photography inside, but they do sell some very nice postcards and color slides, which I'll show you a few of. Here's the overall view of the site. Now, this was all destroyed by Hitler after the French surrender in 1940 and was recreated by the 11th of November 1950. Rail car, here's its history. And for France's surrender in 1940, Hitler decided turnabout was fair play, so he had the car removed from its structure, towed back to its 1918 location, and the French surrender occurred aboard it. After the surrender, Hitler destroyed everything except the rail car and Foch's statue, leaving Foch to guard the empty Glade. And the rail car was taken as a war trophy to Berlin, shown here just coming through the Brandenburg Gate and heading on down Unter den Linden. By 1944, bombing of Berlin was becoming pretty much commonplace. So the rail car was moved to prevent its destruction. Now, what happened after that has been a source of puzzlement for several decades. Everyone agreed the rail car had been destroyed by the SS, but the location and method was subject to a lot of rumors. The German TV station, the ZDF, ran a article and located Ernst Kummerling in a small town called Jonestal, about 150 miles southwest of Berlin, who watched the SS burn it and salvaged the metal builder's logo. I believe that is now in the museum at the Armistice Glade. I'm not 100% certain about that. A replica rail car number 2439D out of the same production run as 2419, and which was also in Foch's train when it arrived in Compiègne, was moved to the restored Glade Museum, modified to look like the 1918 car. Paris, 1919. I took these pictures. I was not in Paris in 1919. I'm a little too young for that. Woodrow Wilson was the only head of state to attend the Paris Peace Conference. He was there mainly to promote his 14 points and a League of Nations. Somebody described it as he brought a Bible to a poker game. The Hotel de la Crillon is prominently located right off the Place de la Concorde. If you walk in through this main door, you'll find this plaque. And my French is fairly adequate here. 3rd of February through the 11th of April, 1919, Wilson and the Allied delegates basically created the League of Nations. The German delegation was in the Hotel de Reservoirs, which was the same hotel they occupied in 1871. However, this time they were the vanquished, not the victors. The hotel is located a little bit north of the Versailles Palace, not too hard to locate. And the actual Paris Peace Conference began in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is across the Seine from the Place de la Concorde. Not too hard to find. I don't know if there's any markers or plaques there. I did not loiter here very long. What with fears of terrorism, I don't think they look too kindly on foreigners taking a lot of pictures and snooping around, the discretion being the better part of valor. The Germans received the terms of the Versailles Treaty, at the Trianon Palace Hotel, not too far from the Versailles Palace. And you'll see this hotel again in a few minutes. And here's the Versailles Palace itself, taken on a overcast, cloudy day in France. Those of us who've lived in Europe understand that all those travel posters are taken on the 3 days of the year when the sun shines. Versailles Palace is the ultimate eclipse. Do not miss an opportunity to take a tour here if you ever have the opportunity. My pictures don't do it justice. Here's the famous Hall of Mirrors. And here it is in 1919 with a cast of thousands, as many delegates from literally all over the world, including someone named Ho Chi Minh, came to the conference trying to get a piece of the post-war action for their country. Now, if you ever had any doubt that the Versailles Treaty was an instrument of revenge, take a look at the dates. I had thought that all of the Versailles Treaty activity had taken place in the Hall of Mirrors, but as we've seen, that was not the case. I thought the treaty had been signed there, but my wife and I took a tour of the King's apartments and came across this table in one of the, oh, who are these tourists? Well, that's my wife and myself. Very poor selfie. All right, and here's a translation of the sign on that table. So it was actually signed in the King's apartments. That's an optional tour. I think you pay extra for it, at least we did. The war with Austria ended at Saint-Germain-en-Laye, which is located west of Paris. To find the chateau, you cross the Seine over this bridge, head west, and you really can't miss it. Here's the Trianon Palace Hotel again, where the war with Hungary ended, and the war with Turkey at the Sivres porcelain factory. Nice looking place for a porcelain factory. That's located the southwest suburb of Paris. Not too hard to locate. Follow the signs to Sivres. And the war with Bulgaria ended at Neuilly-sur-Seine, not too far from the Arc de Triomphe. And now the peace to end all peace. Of course, the end of 3 European and 1 European/Asian empires, German, Russian, Austria-Hungary, and Ottoman. What we see are 3 Baltic states, East Prussia, which was a bone of contention with the Nazi party and one of the excuses to invade Poland, one of the countries. That's where one of my grandparents came from. Now, Czechoslovakia, Austria-Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria had some adjustments, and there was Yugoslavia, which of course now no longer exists. Middle East, the breakup of the Ottoman Empire really created lots of problems with some of these new states. The French and British drew lines on a map, more concerned with their own territorial influence than the tribal relations that run that part of the world. A lot of new countries here: Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, which is now mostly Israel. And as we know, problems continue there. This picture is from the Eiffel Tower. I did not abscond with a World War I observation balloon. The Invalides is a fascinating place to visit. One of its treasures is the tomb of Napoleon. He's buried inside 5 or 6 caskets. They can't seem to decide. My own interpretation is Europe wanted to ensure he never rose from the dead. There are some, in my visit, there was some, a mini museum with some artifacts of Napoleon. And here's the person I really came to visit. The French Military Museum is also there. I've been there 3 times. Each visit, the exhibits have changed, so you never know what you're going to find. Now, nearby, the Invalides is Pershing's residence. When I visited there, I could not find any kind of marker or plaque attributing any significance to it. And if your spouse, significant other, companion is more interested in art rather than military history, the Rodin Museum is right between the two. All right, and Melanie, that concludes my presentation. Should I stop
okay.
share?
Yeah, Steve, you can stop the sharing. Thank you so much.
All right.
Let me just get myself set up.